What? Where did that come from? Oh my God. Oh, she's so, this is unbelievably cutthroat. She's like, I just need to make him look silly for being a libertarian, and I can use this as an opportunity to appeal strong on national defense. The governor's debate in Georgia. We had Stacey Abrams versus Brian Kemp, and I haven't seen a lot of people covering this debate because, you know, Stacey Abrams doesn't have a good, really the best odds on her side, but I think we should check it out. Like, everybody watched the Fetterman debate. Nobody watched this debate, so I'd like to watch this debate since everybody's already seen the Fetterman debate anyway. The governor's debate is between Stacey Abrams and Brian Kemp. This has been an interesting election for a few reasons. One, because Brian Kemp actually had an opponent in the primary that was endorsed by Donald Trump in the same person who actually was against, I believe it was Raphael Warnock in the last election, and lost. And he lost. That primary opponent lost. Trump thought, since Brian Kemp didn't basically overturn the election for him, that he could lash out of Brian Kemp and basically make him not governor. But that doesn't seem to be the case. It doesn't seem Brian Kemp was being taken down by Trump so easily. He survived the Trump onslaught, and now he's going against Stacey Abrams with a somewhat divided base who doesn't like him because of his lack of, you know, devotion to the Trump overlord. And Stacey Abrams has worked very, 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 very hard on voter registration across the board in the state of Georgia. She has worked it was part of her effort and the work of other local activists that got Raphael Warnock and Jon Ossoff elected in 2020. And now she's hoping to use that same activist foundation that she built upon to become governor in the state of Georgia the second time around.
Hello, I'm Donna Lowry, host for Georgia Public Broadcasting Lawmakers. Welcome to the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young debate series from the studios of Georgia Public Broadcasting. This is the general election debate among candidates for governor. Let's meet the candidates for this debate. They are in alphabetical order. Stacey Abrams, a Democrat, is an attorney and former state legislator. Shane Hazel, a Libertarian, is a veteran and podcast host. Brian Kemp, a Republican,
podcast
the incumbent governor for the state of Georgia.
Guess he's got my vote.
Now let's meet our panelists. Jennifer Bellamy is an anchor for 11 Alive in Atlanta. Greg Bluestein is a political reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And Chuck Williams is a reporter with WRBL in Columbus, Georgia. For complete rules on today's debate, please visit the Atlanta Press Club website, atlantapressclub.org/debates. To start the debate, each candidate will be asked 2 questions. Candidates have 60 seconds to answer each question. Chuck Williams, you get the first question of Stacey Abrams.
Thank you, Donna. Ms. Abrams, public opinion polls in our state show support for the right to abortion, Medicaid expansion, and banning assault weapons. You are on the side of public opinion in each of these issues, yet you are behind in almost every poll. Why?
First of all, thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity to address the communities of Georgia. The reason people are on my side are because I'm on the right side of history and on the right side of the issues. But we also know that polls are a snapshot. The question is, who are they taking a picture of? When I'm going across this state, the people I'm talking to are excited about this election, but they also know that they're often left out of the conversation. Students who have found themselves struggling to finish college because they don't have access to financial aid. Families that are struggling to decide between food on their table and healthcare costs. Families facing rising prices. And everyone I've met is afraid of the gun violence and the rising violence in the state. I do not believe that I'm behind. I believe that I'm making the case for Georgia, the case for electing me as the next governor, because the current failures we have seen in this state are not only damning, they are disqualifying. And over the next few years, we have an opportunity to change the trajectory of the state. And I look forward to leading our state forward.
Thank you very much. Greg Bluestein, it's your turn to ask a question of Brian Kemp.
Thank you, Donna. Governor, in recent weeks, 2 recordings have surfaced in which you left the door open, or you appeared to leave the door open, to questions about whether you'd push to ban emergency contraceptives and whether you'd back a statewide ban on the destruction of embryos. Can you tell us right now whether you'd push for these measures or any other additional restrictions on abortion now that the 2019 law is in effect?
No, I would not. I mean, look, we were at many campaign events, people come up, secret recordings, couldn't completely understand the conversation that's going on. But no, that's not my desire to do that. Georgians should know that my desire is...
To be honest, don't trust him. Don't trust him. I mean, it's good that this is the answer we're getting because he most likely will win. Hopefully he does, and hopefully Stacey wins. But if he does, it would be really bad if they went even further than the crazy law they've already implemented.
To continue to help them fight through 40-year high inflation and high gas prices and other things that our Georgia families are facing right now, quite honestly, because of bad policies in Washington, D.C. from President Biden and the Democrats that have complete control. And thankfully, working with the Georgia General Assembly, we've been able to
They say complete control, even though they've got large control over the Supreme Court, and that's part of the reason why Roe v. Wade was overturned, and that question was even asked in the first place. Not to mention 50-50 Senate. Not to mention, we forget about local governance. You're the governor of the state of Georgia. It's not. They don't got complete control if you're the governor. Whatever.
To help give some relief to people despite what's happening in Washington, like giving a income tax credit back to our...
Somebody says, as governor, they have complete control. What can I do? I'm just the mere governor of a state.
Citizens cutting taxes, also suspending the gas tax since March now, $800 million of relief for our hardworking citizens. So that is what my focus has been on, and it's what it will continue to be on.
Thank you very much. Jennifer Bellamy, your question for Shane Hazel.
Mr. Hazel, Georgia seems to be struggling right now in dealing with how to legally take on the issue of cannabis in the state. What do you think needs to be done here? How should Georgia address the issues surrounding marijuana?
I guess a perfect question for a libertarian. We believe that cannabis is a plant that grows from earth naturally, and the hubris that the federal government has shown in making a Schedule I drug while also holding patents on it is...
He used the word hubris. He's lost. He now seems too disconnected. He seems too smarty type. He is now lost. Congratulations. Another libertarian candidate L.
Federal government has shown in making a Schedule I drug while also holding patents on it is one of those things where we find it somewhat laughable. And it is. It is a right of people. It is medicine. It is something that we can add to our industry here in Georgia and really displace a lot of what comes in from outside of Georgia. This is a huge win for Georgia. We have a great agricultural sector. We can grow 2 bumper crops of cannabis every year. The idea that it is still illegal and that Brian Kemp has talked about this and tweeted about it as it is a good thing when we make cannabis bust and cannabis bust only is a real sign that the government in Georgia is using it for the prison industrial complex, for the law enforcement complex to go after communities that would like to see freedom in this area. So it's a right. That's how we see it as libertarians.
Right.
Honestly, it's such an easy question. He did okay. He could have done better. I feel like he could have hammered Kemp more, but maybe that's just not his campaign style.
Thank you very much. You have a rebuttal?
Yeah, I would just like to make sure people at home know that I have been doing exactly what I told them I would do when I was campaigning for governor, and now that I am your governor. We have been going after street gangs and drug cartels. So the things that we're tweeting out there is when our great men and women in law enforcement are making drug busts, not from recreational users and other things. But that's what
he just doesn't respond.
All right, thank you very much.
It's a plant.
Greg, please ask a question.
Brian Kemp losing to a plant.
Ms. Abrams, in 2018, you didn't concede defeat to Governor Kemp, and you talked to systemic problems with the state's election system. This election, do you commit to accept the outcome of the vote, regardless of what it shows? And do you stand by your use of words like rigged 4 years ago to describe the state's election system?
In 2018, I began my speech on November 16th acknowledging that Governor Kemp had won the election. I then proceeded to lay out in grave detail the challenges faced by voters under his leadership as Secretary of State, including the 10+2 who were arrested in Quitman, Georgia, because they had the temerity to use absentee ballots. I told the story of students who were denied access to the right to vote, even though they had duly registered. 80,000 complaints had come in by that day, and it took 4 years of federal investigation in a lawsuit that was the longest-running voting rights lawsuit in the state's in recent history that proved us right. Now, we didn't win every single claim, but we forced massive changes to the election laws. And unfortunately, Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger have decided to restore their greatest hits. Just today, day, a homeless woman was denied the right to vote in Forsyth County because she did not receive a provisional ballot because she had been challenged. As governor, I intend to stand up for the right to vote. I will always acknowledge the outcome of elections, but I will never deny access to every voter, because that is the responsibility of every American to defend the right to vote.
Thank you. Brian Kemp, rebuttal, 30 seconds.
Well, I would just say that Ms. Abrams is going to do a lot of attacking of my record tonight because she doesn't want to talk about her own record. In 2018, in the governor's race, we had the largest African-American turnout in the country. She said that Senate Bill 202, our Recent Elections Integrity Act, what we passed 2 years ago, would be suppressive in Jim Crow 2.0. Just this past May in our primaries, we again had record turnout in the Republican primary and the Democratic primary. In Georgia, it's easy to vote and hard to cheat.
And I'd like to add just a second here, as the Libertarian.
30 seconds for you.
Although you will push for people to have access to going to the polls and voting, you're not pushing ballot access. This is a huge oppression for people like the third parties, the people that want to get their people on the ballot. We have, I think, 20% Democrats, 20% Republicans in the state of Georgia. That leaves 60% of people in Georgia unrepresented by ballot access laws that both of them support.
30 seconds, Ms. Abrams.
Actually, to correct Mr. Hazel, I co-sponsored legislation to expand ballot access because I agree with you that third parties should have better access to the right to vote.
Damn, he had no clue. He was just like, look, she's a Democrat, so she will say ban all third party. And you're like, ah, damn, she broke the code. She broke the code.
State of Georgia. I co-sponsored it with one of our independents in the state legislature. But let's be clear about ballot access and voter access. Brian Kemp was the Secretary of State, and he has assiduously denied access to the right to vote. We know that the right to vote is the only way that we can make the changes we need in the state, the only way we can make the changes we need in this country, whether it's access to the right to an abortion, the ability to take care of our families. We need a governor who believes in access to the right to vote and not in voter suppression, which is the hallmark of Brian Kemp's leadership.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on.
With all due respect, I was called out. I would like to just the record reflect, as my time as Secretary of State, I'm the person that created the online voter registration system in this state, where any Georgian can vote, register to vote 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So for someone to say that we have been suppressive in our state when we've seen turnout increase over the years, including with minorities like African Americans, Latinos, and others, is simply not true. And again, Ms. Abrams is going to lie about my record because she doesn't want to talk about her own.
All right, we're going to move on here.
And that's the case.
We're going to move on here, Mr. Hazel. Jennifer, your question for Brian Kemp.
Governor Kemp, several hospitals...
Can I just say, Stacey Abrams did very, 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 very well there. Like, she's a very good debater, honestly. Honestly, can I be for real? Like, Stacey Abrams isn't the perfect politician. But, man, I don't think I would feel bad to vote for her, generally. On, like, an 80% level.
Medical centers across the state have announced or gone through with plans to close their doors, leaving a gap in care and a reduction in services at a time when our healthcare workers are already suffering from burnout, from increased demand and workloads. Many are now facing care that will be delayed or unavailable, while our state's capital will soon have only one level 1 trauma center. What will you do to ensure Georgians have access to critical healthcare services and hospitals?
Well, I would just remind voters at home there's also hospitals being built across this state and new options for people for health care. Look, the AMC situation was something that was thrown on a lot of political leaders, including me. But instead of complaining about it and doing the blame game, I went and worked with Fulton County, with DeKalb County, with Democrats to come up with a solution that put state resources into Grady to help make sure people have the access and the care that they need in our state. And I'm committed to continuing to do that in the future.
All right. Shane, I'm sorry. Chuck, you get the final question to Shane Hazel.
Thank you. Mr. Hazel, you ran for Congress in 2018. That was just 4 years ago. You ran as a Republican. You got less than 30% of the vote in the Republican primary. What happened between then and now that made you a Libertarian?
Oh, I actually came back to my roots as a Libertarian. We believe in freedom. We saw what the Republican Party was. We saw what the Democratic Party was. They are force and coercion. No matter what they talk about, it's force and coercion. Whether it's certificate of need for hospitals, whether it is taking guns away from law-abiding citizens. It is always force and coercion at the point of a gun from the Democrats and Republicans. To look at life through consent, the eyes that, hey, we can all have transactions. We do it every day in the private sector. 99.9% of us go throughout our day without raping people, without murdering people, without pointing guns at people to take their property. That is not what the government does under Republicans and Democrats, period. That's how I became a libertarian. This is why we're going to send this thing into a runoff. And if people were really looking for something to change, you'd vote libertarian. You'd send a message to both of these parties, because one of these people will most likely be the executive in a rigged system, that you want to be more free.
Thank you. That concludes the first.
What a word. I'm sorry. Like, it just... It's gonna make it go into a runoff. That's all.
First round.
That's the only impact it will probably have.
The debate. The candidates will now ask a question to each of their opponents. Candidates will have 30 seconds to ask the question, 60 seconds to respond, and the candidate who asks the questions will have 30 seconds for rebuttal. By random selection, Brian Kemp, you may ask the first question to Stacey Abrams.
Well, thank you very much. As many people know, I have over 100 sheriffs endorsing my campaign, several of which are Democrats. And my question for Ms. Abrams tonight is, how many sheriffs statewide have publicly endorsed your campaign?
Mr. Kemp, what you are attempting to do is continue the lie that you've told so many times. I think you believe it's the truth. I support law enforcement and did so for 11 years, worked closely with the Sheriff's Association. I'm probably the only person standing here who's ever actually written a SOP for a police department when I was working for the city of Atlanta. But I have two brothers, one who has committed crimes, and I want his victims to be able to call the police and get the help they need, and I've always supported that right. But I have another brother who has faced being pulled over for driving while black when he was coming back from his job as a social worker. Unlike you, I don't have the luxury of relying on slogans to describe my position on public safety. I believe that we need safety and justice because I love both of my brothers. And like most Georgians, I lead a complicated life where we need access to help, but we also need to know that we are safe from racial violence. While you may not have had that experience, too many people I know have, and that is why I will always stand up for making certain that safety and justice are the conversations we're having in Georgia and the delivery we have as the next governor of Georgia.
Thank you. 30 seconds, Mr. Kemp.
Well, I would just tell...
Jesus Christ. Oh, my God. She fucking got she got everything in. She got everything in like the perfect allotted time. Honestly, she is like the like most like focused, like on point, like boom, 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 boom. She's really on point tonight. She's really on point. She's getting her points out. She's counter punching. But the thing that I like about her answers, and this is the thing I like about answers, is she's counter punching when punched at, but then like talking about the positives of her, the positives of what she's offering for Georgia, her record. She's talking about her record. Oh God, she's getting everything in she needs to get in. I have I might need her to be a little bit aggressive. The only thing I would say is that she needs to be really aggressive in this debate because she is behind, and she needs to hit Kemp and need to hit Kemp hard. Definitely on issues like abortion.
People that look, I support safety.
Abortion needs to be the big thing. She hits him over the night. And
justice. But Ms. Abrams refused to answer the question, so I'll let you know that the answer is 0. No sheriffs are endorsing her statewide because of her stances on wanting to defund the police, eliminate cash bail, and serving on the boards of organizations like the Margaret Casey Foundation that supports and gives grants to organizations that are promoting the defund the police movement.
If I may respond, because he actually lied there.
Yes,
I do have the support of sheriffs, but unlike Mr. Kemp, I do not make it my plan to list every person who supports me. I have the support of sheriffs, I have the support of advocates, I have the support of victims, I have the support of those who want to be treated fairly in our system. I have to have conversations with the entirety of Georgia. I don't have the luxury of being a part of a good old boys club where we don't focus on the needs of our people. And that is why my mission has been to put out very concrete plans explaining how I will serve justice, how I will serve safety, and how I will serve the citizens of the state of Georgia.
30 seconds, Brian Kemp.
Well, look, I would just tell people, I know Ms. Abrams is upset and mad because these are things that she said. This is not me making this up. This is things that she said.
But you didn't say anything she said. You said that she doesn't have the support of any sheriffs, and then she said, no, that's not true. What did she, he's not even, what did she say?
In interviews that she's done and she's sitting on organizations that you can go look at the facts yourself. And that's why the men and women
she is
in law
molding,
enforcement
she is
want a governor
coping,
that is
she
gonna
is
stand with
seething.
them, who has been with them, not only to have their back, but also stand shoulder to shoulder on things like civil unrest and going after street gangs and human traffickers.
Thank you very much. Stacey Abrams, you get the next question for Shane Hazel.
Mr. Hazel, Republicans and Democrats have raised the alarm over the rise in the Chinese Communist Party-backed companies purchasing American farmland. To date, they've purchased more than 1 million acres of farmland in the state of Georgia. Would you agree with Mike Pompeo that allowing those purchases in the state of Georgia is a sign of madness? And would you be concerned about the national security implications of the Chinese Communist Party purchasing this land with the support of the state of Georgia?
What? Where did that come from? Oh my God. Oh shit. This is unbelievably cutthroat. She's like, I just need to make him look silly for being a libertarian, and I can use this as an opportunity to appeal strong on national defense. That's what she did. That's what she basically just, I'm going to make libertarianism look silly, and like how you cannot keep a strong country if you're a libertarian country. That's basically what she's doing. That's what she's attempting to do here. I'm interested to see how he's going to respond to this, because what is the libertarian solution to this? The libertarian solution would be, of course, to say, well, you know, people can freely do business as they see fit. That's how he's going to have to respond if he wants to stay a principled libertarian.
I see the setup for this question. I understand why it was projected at me. As libertarians, we believe that you own your property and that the state can't take it away from you and can't sell it or can't determine who you sell it to. The CCP, obviously, which is going through its own internal unrest right now, I believe is probably purchasing this with things like central bank digital dollars and yuan, which are also coming down to a critical nature where people are in uprising.
Look how stone cold she is. Look at her. Like, she's looking ahead. She's not even, he's like, she no longer exists to me. I've done my job. I've done my job. Look at her. She's a fucking shark. She is a shark. You can see it. You can see. Look at her. She's fucking has blood in the water, man. Oh my God, man. She's a killer.
To a critical nature where people are in uprising in China. What we need to look at is how these purchases are being made. Are we accepting fiat, CCP,
it's like the Terminator
in Georgia as a actual currency? It's about as good as the U.S. currency, the fiat currency that we're about to have hoisted on us in terms of a CBDC. I'm not going to tell you or anybody else.
Nobody at home understands anything he's saying, which is probably not good for him.
As governor, how or who to sell your property to. And I imagine that in the end, the free market will work itself out.
Thank you. Stacey Abrams, 30 seconds.
The state of Georgia is watching our farmland be purchased by the Chinese Communist Party. And while that is not normally a conversation that we have, it is something that we should be concerned about. Agriculture is our #1 industry, and Georgia has 13 military installations. The fact that the state of Georgia is working with the Chinese Communist Party, using one of their technologies that both Donald Trump and Joe Biden have warned is very much a national security threat, should be of great concern to every Georgian. This is not about being concerned simply about who's owning the land, but it's about how much access to our information they have because of this state.
Thank you. Shane Hazel, you may ask your question of Stacey Abrams.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. The military-industrial complex is a big problem. It is. And the fact that we have people trying to come here to, I don't know, get a backdoor into our military, I think one of the things we should be talking about as Georgians and as executives is the Defend the Guard Act, where our military has been used very, I don't know, haphazardly around the world to go and take resources from the Middle East, or now in Ukraine.
Mr. Hazel, your question.
This is my question to who?
To Stacey Abrams.
We've already switched gears.
Yeah.
My question to you, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I have hearing problems, guys. My question to you is...
Dude, she's in his head. She's in his head. His head game's gone. He was so distracted trying to mount some defense to Stacey Abrams' onslaught of national security priorities that his head game was so messy. He was spending this entire time he was supposed to ask his question, just like mumbling and fumbling and Ukraine, the Middle East, sir.
You mentioned CBDCs. As the executive of Georgia, when we come into a CBDC from the Federal Reserve, will you, as the executive, accept the CCCP-style currency?
I believe that the conversation about currency is a complicated one. And part of the challenge we have is how this currency is transmitted, the very real security threats with digital currency, the hacking and mining of that digital currency should concern all Georgians. As the governor of Georgia, I will work very closely with the Federal Reserve, but also with the innovators and the entrepreneurs who do see an opportunity. But before we take a step forward that could put us at risk, our responsibility is to understand the complexity of what is happening with these transactions. And as exciting as it is, we also know it's deeply problematic when we do not have the adequate safeguards in place. That's one of the reasons I've raised concerns about WeChat and about the purchase of farmland. But what we know overall is that we need a governor who's conversant in these issues, who understands that, for example, in the state of Georgia, we have access to $3.5 billion in American currency that could be delivered tomorrow to save our hospitals and to save our lives. But our current governor has refused to accept those dollars. My intention is to do what's best for the state
Directed
of
towards
Georgia
the important
every
candidate.
Thank you. Shane Hazel, you get a 30-second rebuttal.
Yeah, working with the Federal Reserve, who's got us into the mess that we are in right now because
Oh, snap. And because it goes to him, it doesn't go to Brian. Brian, how is Brian going to respond? He's going to have to either request a response or it's just going to go by him. Ooh.
Fiat currency, it will be absolutely worthless. They will be dangling carrots in front of the governor, in front of the executives, in front of the legislature to do exactly what their mandates are. If they are mandating that they take the property of people, then they will do it. If they want to invade your homes, your privacy, your businesses, they will do it because of CBDCs.
All right. Stacey Abrams, please ask your question to Brian Kemp.
Absolutely. Mr. Kemp, under your leadership, there is currently a 100-year gap between minority-owned businesses and majority-owned businesses. Although minorities comprise 48% of the population, they only generate 12.2% of the business revenue in the state. And under every analysis that we have seen, it will take 100 years to close that gap, given the current process that you have in place. You served 4 years in the Senate, 8 years as Secretary of State in charge of businesses. You served 4 years as governor. What are your concrete, specific, targeted plans to decrease and address the racial equity gap currently facing contracting and purchasing for minority-owned businesses?
Governor.
Wow. Yo, okay. So what she's doing right now, she basically just said, I'm going to put you in a policy wonk pretzel that if you don't know basically, she's basically like, you got to give me a policy wonk answer here. I'm going to tear you apart. You got to give me a policy wonk answer about what you have done about an issue that you really don't give a fuck about or have done very little to help with. Oh God, that's really, she twisted him up. And she was very specific about what she wanted. There's not like a lot of way to dodge around that. Zurdo, thank you so much for the tier 1. Appreciate it.
Governor Kemp.
Well, I would remind Georgians that the first part of my plan was keeping our state open for business and allowing all business people and working Georgians to work. When Stacey Abrams was criticizing me
tilted. He's trying to pivot out.
Also pushing to get our kids back in the classroom. When again, Stacey Abrams was criticizing me for doing that.
Pivot,
a lot of
not
Georgians,
related,
including African Americans and other minorities, cannot go to work if their kids are not in the classroom. We have the lowest unemployment rate in the country for African Americans. We also were named we're in the top 10 of the states for black entrepreneurship in the state of Georgia. So our economy is incredible, and we will continue to work with all of those entrepreneurs.
None of that addressed the question. None of that was
and working
policy
class
long.
Georgians.
She's got to push. She's got to hit hard.
For you when Miss Abrams was not.
That wasn't my question.
We
That's what she has to say.
Refunds. We were doing tax cuts. We were suspending the gas tax to help you deal with 40-year high inflation when she was criticizing us.
Stacey Abrams, 30-second rebuttal.
I would point out that Mr. Kemp did not address the needs of purchasing and contracts for black and brown-owned businesses, which is what he has refused to do for the last 16 years.
Boom.
We know that $10.9 billion has been delivered to the state of Georgia through 2 recent acts at the congressional level. And Brian Kemp does not have a plan for making certain that people of color have access to those contracts, access to purchasing. It was only in July of this year that he finally acknowledged that there might be a problem. He has said that we need to study it. I would tell him just cheat off of my paper. I know the answer. We need a governor who actually believes in equity, racial equity, economic equity in the state of Georgia, and I will deliver.
Thank you. Shane Hazel, please ask your question to Brian Kemp.
Brian, in 2020, on April 2nd, you locked down Georgia, threatening peaceful people with force and coercion. You called people in Georgia non-essential, and it killed millions of jobs. You bent the knee to big pharma and pushed a vaccine that was untested on people. And it's killed people.
Oh, it's libertarian. Here's the libertarian. Oh, there it comes. Vaccines. Yep, here it is. That's the Libertarian Party we all know and love.
Invade our businesses. And then you had the audacity to brag about record tax revenue. You want to say sorry to anybody?
So is that a question, or?
That is a question. Do you want to say sorry to anybody?
Well, look, I'll be glad to talk about my record because obviously Mr. Hazel is gravely mistaken.
He was confused. He was like, what? That was a fucking question? Was that a what the fuck was that? It was just, you just threw every attack possible and then said, fuck you. That wasn't a question.
If you look at the executive orders that I signed, we said every business in Georgia was essential. There was a few that we asked to help us stop the spread, flatten the curve, build PPE supplies and hospital bed capacities. Because unlike him, I was getting the calls from hospitals saying, hey, we are out of surgical gowns. We're out of masks. We need ventilators. And we were literally working 24/7 to supply those items while also keeping our economy open in this state. And as you know, I was the first state to open the small parts that we asked to close, and our recovery's been as good as any state in the country. We have had 2 record years of economic development because of our business environment, working with the General Assembly to make sure that we're putting Georgians first and Georgia businesses and Georgia workers first, and that's what I'm committed to continuing to do.
30 seconds, Mr. Hazel.
You should have put Georgia freedom first, period. You didn't have the power to lock down businesses, and you signed the executive order on April 2nd. It was clear as day. I sat there and watched you do it, and I was like, there is no coming back from this. The idea that I guess the default was to lock down Georgia instead of trusting Georgians with their freedom to adapt in a time of very changing circumstances, I think is a tyrant move, and I think the left and right are fascist and communist socialists, whereas we're talking about real liberty, trusting Georgians.
What the fuck did he just say?
Those decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Hazel. Brian Kemp, you have the final.
To fascist, socialist, communist, Marxist, Maoist, anarchists. Oh my God, dude. Libertarians making Republicans look sane since forever.
Question in this round for Shane Hazel.
Well,
it's not even like, because the thing is, I would agree with libertarians on more issues than I would probably agree with Republicans, right? But the thing is, they just make Republicans look normal by just, like, anytime they're on a debate stage with them.
I would just ask Mr. Hazel if he supports the things that we have done because we were open and Georgians were working and we've had excess revenue. So instead of doing big government...
That's our tax money.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't support it because
Your
here's the thing is, when we get to that point, when we talk about
did you hear? He was like, okay, you're fucking... All right. He was thinking like, okay, I'm done with this fucking thing. Why am I talking to him anyway?
So instead of doing big government...
That's our tax money.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't support it because here's the thing is, when we get to that point, when we talk about what you're doing...
I was fixing to ask my...
Finish your question.
Please go ahead.
I would just say, do you support the tax cuts we've done, returning $1 billion of taxpayer money and suspending the gas tax for Georgians to help fight through 40-year high inflation and bad domestic energy policy?
Georgia, I hope you hear me when I say libertarians think taxation is theft. It's your money. It's your property. Yeah. You should be able to determine what you do with it. I don't support the fact that you haven't ended qualified immunity. I don't support the fact that you haven't ended civil asset forfeiture. I don't support the fact that you haven't ended the drug war. You haven't ended nonviolent crime. You haven't ended cash bail. You haven't ended no-knock raids. You haven't implemented community review boards. And you haven't banned blacked-out cop cars that go after people for more money. It's ridiculous. De-escalation by the executive to leave peaceful people alone in the state of Georgia. That's my message to both of you, to everybody in the state who wears a badge. Stop going after peaceful people.
Mr. Kemp, 30-second rebuttal.
Well, that's simply not true. As Georgians know, I have followed the laws and the Constitution of this state. and I ran on going after criminal street gangs because I knew there was an issue in our state when other people wouldn't even talk about it and the media wouldn't acknowledge it. And you look at the amount of fentanyl that's coming across the southern border because of bad border policies from this administration. Every governor in the country is having to deal with that. So yes, I'm going to go after bad.
Can I just say, this is my favorite debate moderation style so far for a debate. Like, this is my favorite so far. I think the moderators here are doing a fantastic job letting them go back and forth and not just be like, it's brilliant. I like it.
That are selling bad drugs and killing our children and our other citizens.
The free market way to do that would be to allow cannabis and psilocybin to handle the mental health issues.
Okay, well, I wasn't talking about cannabis. I was talking about deadly fentanyl.
Stop busting them then.
Gentlemen, we're going to move on. That concludes our second round. For those just joining us, this is the general election debate between candidates for governor. We will now go back to the panel to ask questions to the candidate of their choice until we run out of time. As a point of moderator privilege, I may also ask questions of the candidates, and I will determine when a rebuttal is appropriate. And I'm going to use that moderator privilege right away to ask some education questions. Mr. Kemp, if reelected, you've said you'll push for $65 million dedicated to fighting pandemic learning loss, hiring more counselors, and recruiting teachers to fill shortages. How do you respond to those who say you should have prioritized those academic-related issues over laws dealing with divisive concepts, parental laws, and obscene books in the past legislative session? Even those who were pushing for those laws in the end say they don't have much teeth.
Well, look, we have been pushing for those things. You can talk to school superintendents around the state. We have worked with them really over the last year and a half, 2 years on learning loss. We've been working with our superintendents and other education groups. We passed 2 different pieces of legislation dealing with the teacher pipeline, which is getting more teachers into the system. Our plan is working with higher education, including our HBCUs and others, to make sure we're getting more of the right people and more of them in the classroom to help mentor our children. This is really just the next step in the process. We are funding K through 12 education in this state more than we ever have per pupil, ever. And that's coming off a recession during the middle of a global pandemic. This includes my promised teacher pay raise of $5,000 that we completed in my first full term, despite having to deal with 2 years of a global pandemic and a recession. So I think it's incredible what we've been doing, but make no mistake, we have more work to do, and I'm committed to doing that.
Thank you. Shane Hazel, would you tell us your education plan?
Yeah, it's to put it in the hands of the private sector. The government education system that came from Prussia in the 1700s has obviously failed Americans. We don't understand economics. We don't understand our civil culture. We don't understand a whole lot about what goes on behind the scenes in politics. The idea that we want to privatize everything as libertarians is good for education. Think about Walmart having a monopoly on force to teach your children. It's insane. The idea that we do this with a government has side effects. We see them on a daily basis.
Defund the schools, dude. It's just childish. It's just never gonna work.
We need to get government out of education. We need to allow parents to seek out the best education for their kids. And we also believe that they have the responsibility to do so. So to help fix this nation, start here in Georgia, is get the government and the admin out of the classroom and get it out of our lives.
Thank you. Ms. Abrams, in education, you propose a boost in teachers' pay, more state-paid preschool slots for lower-income children and their families, and more. If you win the governor's race, you'll likely have Republican majorities in both chambers. Given what we know about partisan divisions, how will you get your education proposals passed and funded?
So let's begin with what my proposals are. Georgia is sitting on a $6.6 billion surplus. That's money that we have after we've paid every bill, after we've put 15% aside for, say, a rainy day fund. That is money that after we've accounted for increases in population. And I want to invest it in our children and in our families, beginning with making certain that we have pre-K slots. We have 4-year-olds on a waiting list. I've never met a 4-year-old who waits to turn 5. But we can solve that problem with the money we have right now. We can also give an $11,000 pay raise to our teachers instead of a $5,000 pay raise on layaway. We can make certain that we are increasing access to the pipeline because teachers aren't in the pipeline because they can't make enough money to take care of themselves and their families. And that is why under this governor, we have a 67% retention rate. Any other CEO who lost more than 30% of their workforce would be fired. And that is why my plan is to use the resources we have today to plan for today and tomorrow. We've got the money, and we have economists in Georgia and national economists who have looked at my plan, and they say it works. Check my plan out at StaceyAbrams.com. Check my math. It works.
Thank you. 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'd just like to let people know that, look, my plan is to use the revenue that we have because we've been open. If Stacey Abrams had been your governor over the last 4 years, you wouldn't have that excess revenue because she wanted the state to stay locked down and criticize me when I opened it back up. We have, in fact, been using this revenue, and will do so in the future, to do another income tax refund and put the money back in your pocket. We're also going to do a property tax relief grant one time that helps you with rising property values and rising property taxes that the counties are not rolling back.
Thank you very much.
If I may respond, because
30 seconds.
This is going to go back and forth between the Democrats and the Republicans. If they keep attacking each other, I'm going to say
we've got to move on. Ms. Abrams, 30 seconds.
Stop.
Mr. Hazel,
Stop.
We're not going to be excluded from this.
I'm not excluding you, but he did refer to her, so we are going to have her speak first.
You're going to take money and property from people
Stop.
who don't even attend your schools because they don't
Mr.
agree
Hazel,
with them.
we want to move on. Ms. Abrams?
I want to point out 3 things.
Libertarians, there they go. And hey, I thought they agreed. I thought they believed in the NAP, the non-aggression principle. Guess not.
That were inaccurate. 1, I urged caution because any leader should privilege the lives of those they serve. 38,000 people died in Georgia. We have one county where 1 in every 100 Hancock County residents perished under this governor. And so, yes, I urged caution. But I also urge good math. We have the money in our accounts to do what is right. Money not delivered by Brian Kemp, money delivered by federal Democrats, and money that is delivered by hardworking Georgians who have generated the surplus, and they deserve investments in their lives. And the income taxes that we keep hearing about, 50,000 people are getting $500 million. The rest of us are going to see $193.
Thank you.
That is not a good return on investment.
Shane Hazel, 30 seconds, please.
It's
and then we have
stolen money.
to move on.
All of it's stolen money from people who have
Stolen.
property. The fact that we have property tax in America has got to be one of the most un-American things I've ever heard of. There are a lot of us at homeschool because we don't believe in the government school system, and we are still fleeced every year to the tune of thousands and thousands of dollars to pay for a broken school system that we don't agree with. That's both of you guys.
Well,
sorry.
With all due respect, Ms. Abrams called me out again.
All right.
About these
30 seconds, and then we really are going to move on.
But the federal money that we're able to use right now and spend is because our state was open, and we didn't have to use this federal money to backfill state revenues, which has put us in an incredible position to move forward in our state.
Mr. Kemp, we're one of several states that have had the same exact experience. It is disingenuous to claim
and not having a conversation.
We're going to move on.
It's the people's money.
We're going to move on.
The people. Power to the people. He's this fucking maniac.
Greg Bluestein, you have the next question.
Ms. Abrams, I'm going to go back to one of Donna's underlying questions, which is the how issue.
Absolutely.
You've staked out dozens of policy proposals that would have to win approval from lawmakers, including Medicaid expansion, including several of the proposals you outlined here today. But it's highly likely the legislature will remain in Republican control. How are you going to win approval of these measures when in the face of staunch Republican opposition?
Well, I don't actually believe there is staunch Republican opposition. I served in the legislature for 11 years, and every day during my tenure, I worked across the aisle to get good done. They put it in my title. I was minority leader, meaning I couldn't win unless I could work with others. That is why I'm the only person I know of who got an A rating from the Georgia Chamber of Commerce and the Friend of Labor Award for the same work in the same year. The work that I do is working with people to find out how we get solutions. Medicaid expansion is a perfect example. We have 19 hospitals at risk of closure, joining the 6 hospitals that have closed under this governor. We are sending a Brinks truck of $3.5 billion of our money to Kentucky, to Louisiana, to Ohio, because this governor will not accept the money. And the resources that we need in our state will come to our state when we have leaders willing to work across the aisle to bring our money home. But it's more important than that.
19
about
is
how
a
do we
shit
take care of
ton.
our families? How do we make certain that we're addressing high housing prices? How do we tackle the issue of gun violence? How do we support our freedoms and protect our people? And we need a governor who can do the math, but also do the morality of making sure we take care of every single Georgian.
Thank you, Ms. Abrams. Governor Kemp, you have 30 seconds.
Well, I would just say that one way we deal with gun violence is to take the bad people that are doing the shootings and lock them up.
Lock up the bad.
Like Ms. Abrams wants to do. But listen, she's also said that the silver bullet on health care is Medicaid expansion, adding 650,000 people. Well, there's been 600,000 people added to the Medicaid rolls since I become governor. And the problem is it's a broken government program that she wants the government decide your health care that will also kick 200,000 private citizens off their private sector health care.
Thank you.
If I may respond.
30-second rebuttal.
Just talk about
he
this
called
just
her
for a
name.
second.
Ms. Abrams, you have a 30-second rebuttal.
Number one, Medicaid
This is
expansion
ridiculous.
will allow 500,000 Georgians who are working people to get access to health care. That is a good thing in a state where we have people dying every day from cancer, from issues with health, issues with diabetes, issues with heart disease. But number two, the 600,000 people that he references who are on Medicaid, they are put there because of the public health emergency. And when that ends, they will lose health care, which will add more people who are on the streets unable to get health care. Under this governor, we've lost 6 hospitals. We have ambulance wait times that are excessive, and our people need relief, and they need their money back.
I would like to weigh in.
We
as a
want
veteran
to
here.
give our panelists
Yeah.
a chance to ask more
But
questions. So,
we're just going
Chuck
back and
Williams,
forth.
it is your
We're just
turn
going
to
back
ask a
and forth.
question, Mr.
It's insane.
Governor, the Democrats have controlled the U.S. Senate for 2 years because Georgia shifted from 2
I'm sorry, this is
Republicans
funny
to
as
2
fuck.
Democrats
This is great.
in January of 2021. One of those seats was held by Kelly Loeffler, a person you appointed to that post. She then lost to Senator Warnock. Do you wish you had made a different choice when you selected Kelly Loeffler?
Well, no, not at all. I mean, I was excited about her candidacy. I know she worked extremely hard. It was a very challenging environment in 2020. And I think it goes to the point that in 2020, watching that election, I learned a lot of lessons. You know, a lot of the things that we haven't been doing with the ground game from a political perspective, we are now doing. Making sure that when we're campaigning, that we're making sure what we know the differences are with the candidates, but also we got to be for something. And what I'm for is doing another $1 billion tax rebate, for doing property tax relief grants, for continuing to strengthen rural Georgia and run rural broadband like we have been doing that. We started this program long before the pandemic hit. Doing economic development projects where 74% of
That's the thing. Georgia is a red state, but it's getting more and more blue. And part of that is because of the fact that Republicans got comfortable. It's a bunch of other reasons as well. It would have happened anyway. But a part of that, of 2020, Republicans got comfortable.
$30 billion over the last 2 record years is going to rural Georgia. Over half the, 80,000 jobs that are going with those projects outside the 10 metro counties in rural Georgia, and I'm committed to doing that in the future.
Mr. Hazel, if you would like to have 30 seconds, you may.
Thank you very much. The state of Georgia needs a governor who understands econ. The $200 trillion of unfunded liability in this country, as a veteran, understanding that we have a veterans health care system that is in shambles. They treat you as a liability, and they will throw pills at you every chance they get. They won't actually address your health. There is no way on earth we're going to expand that to the rest of the 99% of the country. It's a fairy tale, and it doesn't exist. That's why the economy is collapsing, because they continue to print trillions and trillions of dollars and hike interest rates at the same time.
Thank you very
Policies
much.
like that are going to do the same.
Thank you. Jennifer Bellamy, it's your turn to ask a question.
This question is for each of you. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing Georgia and Georgians, and how do you think it should be addressed? What will you do as governor to address that challenge?
Let's start with you, Stacey Abrams.
Gang crime is up. Gun violence is up. Housing prices have skyrocketed. Equity investors have purchased 30% of the homes in the state of Georgia. We have 1.4 million people without health insurance who cannot see a doctor when they need one. We live in a state of fear. And this is a governor who, for the last 4 years, has beat his chest but delivered very little for most Georgians. He has weakened gun laws and flooded our streets. He has weakened our privacy rights and women's rights. He has denied women the access to reproductive care. The most dangerous thing facing Georgia is 4 more years of Brian Kemp. We need a governor who actually understands the math
Jesus.
and the morality. We need to understand that, yes, we have veterans, like Mr. Hazel pointed out, who can't get access to health care, in part because they're not fully covered by VA benefits and will only get health insurance if we expand Medicaid. We have seniors who are being forced out of their homes because this governor refuses to address the issue of housing crises. In fact, he told an audience that he didn't want to upset investors by giving local authorities control over housing prices, letting them address the issues. We need a governor who will do more for more Georgians.
I want to give each one of them a chance to answer Jennifer's question. Shane Hazel.
The biggest problem facing us is the economy. But to quote the great Rothbard, the man who puts all the guns and all the decisions into the hands of a central government and then says, limit yourself, is he truly
Shut the fuck up, who cares? No one cares.
The idea that the economy
shut up,
biggest
please,
problem that we have in Georgia is because people don't understand economics. These guys don't understand economics from Republicans or Democrats, or else we wouldn't be in the hole that we're in terms of trillions and trillions of dollars. What we need to do is get back to basics, Austrian economics, where we get rid of this cancer that has invaded every transaction that we have through a fiat currency system, creating freedom for everybody in Georgia is the default position. Not more government, not more programs, not more policies, not more point at the barrel of a gun, force and coercion. It is freedom.
All right. Brian Kemp, your answer to the question.
Well, I'll first, since I didn't get a rebuttal after being called out, would just let Georgians know again that my record's being attacked because Ms. Abrams doesn't want to talk about her own record. If you look at what the state of Georgia and our First Lady, Marty Kemp, has done to raise the awareness on ending human trafficking, going after the perpetrators and supporting the victim, as well as us working with the General Assembly to give Medicaid benefits to birthing mothers up to a year after having that child and other things, shows you our state that we value life and that we care. But in the future, my focus is going to be what it was when I opened the debate, and that is helping you fight through 40-year high inflation and disastrous policies in Washington, D.C. I would remind you that Stacey Abrams campaigned to be Joe Biden's running mate. She supports these policies that have raised taxes on hardworking Americans and Georgians when they promised they would not. We're working with the General Assembly to help you fight through that by suspending the gas tax and giving your money back
Thank you very much.
Pocket.
Thank you very much. Greg, your next question.
Governor, I want to stay with you and talk about something that just came up in the last exchange a little bit. Earlier today, you rolled out a new public safety plan that offers a crackdown, promotes a crackdown on criminal offenses. What it doesn't specifically address is gun violence. Your critics say that your permissive gun policies will only lead to more crime. What do you propose you will do in a second term if you're reelected to address gun-related crimes?
Well, again, we're going after the people that are doing these gun-related crimes. I mean, and that's what we're doing, going after street gangs in this regard. You know, during the pandemic, when I was talking to people about how we were responding and what we were dealing with, I was hearing from educators and athletic directors and other people saying, Governor, we got to get our kids back in the classroom because we're losing them. We're going to lose them a decade of children because these kids that we're recruiting when they're 13, 14, 15 years old to be on the ball field or be in the band or be on the robotics team or what have you, extracurricular activity, they're being recruited by street gangs because they're not in the classroom. So those are the kind of things that we are focused on to make sure that these kids are under the right environment. And my new public safety plan is stiffening penalties for gang members that are recruiting our children. And I believe that most Georgians support that, and I'm committed to working with all law enforcement to make a dent there.
Thank you. Chuck Williams.
This is for Governor Kemp and Ms. Abrams. Columbus, Macon, Atlanta, and other communities have benefited from a Georgia State Patrol task force that has helped augment police coverage in those cities and some others over the last year. What can be done to make sure that local agencies that are short on officers can handle these policing duties without having to rely on the state? Ms. Abrams?
Well, you actually asked Mr. Kemp first.
I said for both. Okay,
yeah, it's for both.
Governor.
Yeah, look, I'm glad to answer that question. The crime suppressing unit that I asked Colonel Wright to put together during civil unrest when I grew tired of local elected political leaders that wouldn't let their local law enforcement go after dangerous people during civil unrest, that had no chase policies, where street racers and street gangs are terrorizing our citizens. I told Colonel Wright I wanted a plan, I wanted to know how much it's going to cost, and I want to know who we're going to work with. And that's why the State Patrol, GBI, Department of Natural Resources, game wardens, working with the Fulton County Sheriff, who's helped us with jail facilities, the Atlanta Police Department, we went and put a plan together to start going after street racers and going after violent criminals and have more boots on the ground. We've done the same thing in Columbus.
Unironically, a lot of people care about street racers. I know that sounds silly, but I've been in a lot of local city council meetings where like people will go on and on and on and on and on about street racers, especially the elderly. The elderly really hate street racers.
We've done it in Macon, we've done it in Savannah, and we'll do it wherever we're needed. This is not our job. We're using funds from the governor's emergency fund to help pay for these dollars, and thankfully the General Assembly supports that because we've been in the fight when others were not.
Thank you. Ms. Abrams?
Street gangs did not shoot 6 Asian women going into a gun store, getting a weapon, and murdering women in less than an hour. Street gangs aren't the reason people are getting shot in grocery stores and in parking lots and in schools. Street gangs are one part of the problem, but we have a governor who has weakened gun laws across this state, flooded our streets with guns by letting dangerous people get access to those weapons. Georgia does not have a waiting period. We do not have universal background checks. And one of the few permits that we had that was helping keep us safe stopped 5,000 people who should not have had weapons from getting them, got weakened by this governor with his criminal carry law. As the next governor, my intention would be to actually give the people who do 90% of law enforcement the support they need. We know that they have asked for at least $136 million so they can recruit and retain officers. I am the only candidate who's put in place a plan for at least $25 million in grants, not loans, to go to these local law enforcement officers so they can recruit and retain officers so that their officers aren't working 2 or 3 jobs simply to make ends meet.
Thank you. Before your rebuttal, Governor Kemp, Shane Hazel, you may respond to this question.
You keep going back to guns, Stacey, and I think it's going to be your undoing here in Georgia. Georgia, we're going to have less and less gun laws, whether it's under Republicans or Libertarians. Libertarians don't believe in any gun laws. We believe that you know how to best protect you and your property. And the biggest mass murderer in history is government. It's not private citizens. Most private citizens, like I said before, go throughout their day without
no gun laws, not a single one.
Doing any harm.
Have you raped? Have you murdered? And now are out of prison? You have as many gun laws as you want. Don't worry, you have many guns as you want. You can just go out and do whatever you want. Have a nice day. Fucking hell. Are you suicidal? Not our problem. Here's a gun.
To anybody. However, the people in the government with all of the guns still go after people with a badge when they shouldn't have to. In Holly Springs, Georgia, I introduced the Helios Initiative, where we got rid of civil asset forfeiture. It was a one-page bill through decentralization, nullification, using the Constitution that made the officers in Holly Springs safer because they don't have to go out there and they don't have to harass people of color while driving while black. They don't have to go out there and look for drugs. They don't have to go out there and do any of these.
It is so, I'm sorry. It is, do you know, it made me so, like, what he's talking about right now is cool, but it made me feel so uncomfortable when he was like, it helped people of color who are black. And just like, so deliberately looks at Stacey. Like, that's for you, girl. Like, oh God, it's so bad.
These things because civil asset forfeiture is also the government stealing more than criminals, hardened criminals, from anybody and everybody in the state of Georgia.
Thank you. Governor Kemp, 30 seconds.
Well, thank you. I would just let people at home know the largest, fastest growing segment of the population that's buying handguns and firearms is African Americans and females. You know why? Because the criminals are the only ones that do have the guns. You have local governments that are holding up concealed weapon permits that are keeping law-abiding citizens from being able to.
Can I be honest? It almost sounded like he was saying that all women and black people were criminals. Like, why are the women and black people getting all the guns? Because we're worried, because the criminals are getting the guns. That sounds like he's saying that the women. I'm sorry. It came off weird.
To simply use their Second Amendment right to protect themselves and their property and their families. I will certainly support that.
Thank you.
Mr. Hazel, may I respond?
Yes, 30 seconds.
Let's be clear. I believe that we can protect the Second Amendment and protect second graders at the exact same time. That means that, yes, more people are buying guns, but that's because they think that's the only way to protect themselves because guns have flooded our streets. These are communities that want to be safe. They don't want to have to carry weapons. I know how to shoot. My great-grandmother taught me. But I know that the person who is most responsible is the person who holds the weapon. And that is why I will quote Ronald Reagan, trust but verify. And because of the criminal carry law that Brian Kemp signed into law, there is no longer a background check for those who have concealed carry permits. That makes all of us less safe.
How are you going to
Thank you
take the guns?
Don, if I could respond.
How is she going to take the guns? That's a great
really
question.
want to move on.
Well,
He's triggered both of them. She's triggered both of them.
Federal background check on every individual that buys a firearm in the United States of America.
Which shouldn't exist either.
That is not true. That's not true.
I understand the point you're making, but the point is, when you buy a firearm, you get a background check.
Mr.
And
Kemp,
none of the laws
More
changed.
Mr. Kemp, if you're in Georgia through a gun sale or a private sale,
Well,
through a gun
Mr.
show or a private sale, you're not
All right,
subject to that.
we're gonna have to move on.
Interrupted you tonight. And
I apologize.
Candidates, we have to move on. I'm going to allow Jennifer to ask what's going to be the final
What just
question in this
happened?
round.
I'm sorry.
A
This is
study
mess.
recently showed frustration among our nation's teachers with political interference into
Don't
education
apologize.
with issues like COVID-19 and critical race theory presenting additional challenges to a profession that's already dealing with low pay, falling interest, and people leaving. What would you do specifically as governor to recruit, retain, and empower educators for schools across the state of Georgia for each of you?
Shall I?
All right, we'll start with you, Ms. Abrams.
And let me again apologize to Mr. Kemp for interrupting. This is a very important topic to me, and I apologize for my outburst. I will say that when it comes to education, we know teachers are leaving the workforce. We have a 67% retention rate, but 70% of our teachers have said they would not recommend teaching to their colleagues. That is because of low pay, because of overregulation, because of high stress, and because they believe that they are being told to teach to a curriculum that does not reflect the values and needs of our students. When a teacher is told that you have to lie to a child, which is what happened with the divisive language, the divisive concepts legislation, teachers are not being able to teach the whole history of our students. They're not able to tell their children what they need to know. As the next governor of Georgia, I will repeal those laws, I will increase pay, and I will make certain that all of our teachers can start and continue through their time well paid and well protected and well supported by the government.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time, so only 45 seconds. So, Brian Kemp?
Well, I would just say this is exactly why I did the $5,000 teacher pay raise that I ran on in 2018. We've also done a Parents' Bill of Rights to have parents fully engaged with their schools to make sure that they know what's happening in their kids. Quite honestly, people are tired of their kids being indoctrinated in the classroom. But we've also worked with our educators on these pieces of legislation to make sure that they make good common sense. But I would also tell you that people are tired of these issues like not having fairness in girls' sports and other things. And quite honestly, it's woken a lot of people up. So we got to continue to have good conversations like we've done with our teacher pipeline legislation, like we're doing with helping 9,000 parapros get fully certified to be in the classroom.
Thank you very much. Shane Hazel, you get 45 seconds.
Your question raises a lot of interesting points. A lot of these teachers, like my own wife, has left.
I'm sorry. We've got an important message from a conservative Twitter account that we need to look at, chat. We need to interrupt this debate. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry to do this.
Guys, Nick Adams here. I got to tell you about Fortnite. I hear parents complaining all the time that Fortnite is transforming their child into a woke beater. Children should not be poisoning their minds with video games. They should be playing sport outside, in church, or reading the Bible. The Bible creates alphas. Fortnite creates beaters. That is a fact of life. Incontrovertible.
Beaters.
So put down the Fortnite controller and pick up a Bible.
Pick up a Bible.
We need alpha males. Because alpha males get hot women like this.
Have your sons get Bibles so they can get attractive wife. Put down Fortnite or you will have ugly wife. Fantastic. Okay.
The profession of teaching to homeschool, to go to private school, to do something outside of this narrative where admin from the federal government and the state government is forcing them to teach things they don't want to teach to test. They can't stand the administration who makes six figures. It is bloated. It is absolutely gotten out of control. We need to nullify property tax. We need to let people get out of the system. We need to allow the private sector to work, because before education was put under the thumb of government here, we had some of the brightest, most well-read people in the entire world, and that's what we need to bring back.
All right, thank you very much. We are running out of time, so that is all the time we have for questions. Each candidate will now have only 40 seconds for a closing statement. And Brian Kemp, you get the first closing statement.
Well, first of all, let me thank the Atlanta Press Club for having us. When I ran for governor in 2018, I promised to put hard-working Georgians first ahead of the status quo and the politically correct. I said shortly after being sworn in, I would work hard as your governor every single day for all Georgians, whether you voted for me or not. I'm so optimistic about the future of our state, the lowest unemployment rate in the history of the state, the most people working, and economic opportunity in all parts of our state, no matter your zip code or neighborhood. Stacey,
do you think if Brian Kemp could become president, but that would mean slavery is back in America? They've brought back slavery. Do you think he would do it? Like, he presses a button, he's made president, but slavery's back. Do you think he would do it? Saying, yeah, he wants slavery. I don't think he wants slavery. I'm just saying, I would think, does he think it's like a worthy sacrifice for him to be president? That's what I'm thinking. Or is he that much like an egotistical, like, I need to be in power? Would he do it? You're the president. You just press the end slavery button. Look, my answer is no. I think he wouldn't. I think he would not bring back slavery. So I think he would not become president under those circumstances. I think he is not that much of a monster. There are, I think, two politicians I can think of that I would not say that for. The first one is Matt Gaetz. I just don't trust him. The second one is Steve Bannon. Those are the two that I'm not confident would press the button. That they wouldn't press the button. Matt Gaetz, for some reason, scares me the most.
Abrams said Georgia's the worst state in the country to live. Well, Marty, the girls and I disagree. We think Georgia's the greatest state in the country to live, work, and raise our children, and that's why I'm asking for your vote and support to keep it that way. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you. Stacey Abrams, 40 seconds.
I, too, want to thank everyone tonight for your support. And I want to point out that Brian Kemp did make promises. He promised to keep us safe, but crime has gone up. He promised to protect us, and yet he's attacked our freedoms. He has promised to take care of our families, and yet the rising prices in Georgia are rising because he refuses to expand Medicaid, because he refuses to tackle the affordable housing crisis that we have, and he's sitting on $400 million of our money that he will not spend to keep us under roofs and in our homes. As the next governor, I want us to have more money in our pockets, more protections in our lives, more freedoms in our days, and more opportunity in our communities. I see all of Georgia, and as the next governor, it would be my intention to serve all of Georgia. I encourage you to go to my website, StaceyAbrams.com, and please make a plan to vote, and know that I'm asking you for your vote tonight.
Thank you. Shane Hazel, you get the final 40-second closing statement.
Georgia, you are essential. We are in changing times. Technology, money, politics are all changing incredibly fast. As humans, our superpower is our ability to adapt to a changing world. This power to adapt, our passion and genius, is unleashed when it is free. Free from tax, free from government, and their lockdowns, free from government.
Well, it was nice knowing you for one debate and never again. I'll never see this guy again,
how to
ever.
adapt and run your life.
Gone.
And that is your right to do so. It is time peaceful people were free to take on the challenges we face. Our message to the government is simple. It's
Thank you,
time to
Mr.
leave
Hazel.
peaceful people alone. If you believe the government is so damn essential,
We have to go. I'm
stop
sorry.
robbing us at the
Thank
point of
you.
a gun and compete. with
That
us.
concludes our debate. Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th.
Perfect. I couldn't have ended. It couldn't have ended any other way. It couldn't have ended any other way. That was perfect. That was perfect.